Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bonjour Monsieur le Président, merci. Nous sommes ravis de vous accueillir cette année encore à VivaTech, fidèle, constant. Vous avez toujours été aux côtés des startups, soutenu l'innovation, soutenu le progrès. Sur la durée, vous avez tenu bon sur certaines réformes, pas toujours faciles sur le plan fiscal notamment, et cette constance paye. La France est aujourd'hui sur le continent européen le pays qui attire le plus de financement pour les startups, plus de 5 milliards d'euros l'an dernier. Qu'est-ce qui fait que la France est plus attractive qu'avant, et surtout qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire maintenant pour aller un cran plus loin, parce qu'on voit bien que ça n'est que le début d'une histoire.
Bonjour, heureux de vous retrouver. Je crois que ça fait du bien de se retrouver collectivement et de refaire des rendez-vous en présentiel, comme on dit. Et puis ça arrive dans un temps où un optimisme prudent est permis. Pour répondre très directement à votre question, je pense qu'on a la ressource première absolument indispensable, qui sont les femmes et les hommes. On a les talents et on a l'état d'esprit général, c'est que la France est un pays de créativité. Je l'ai plusieurs fois rappelé en disant que le mot entrepreneur est un mot français, mais nous sommes un pays d'artistes, nous sommes un pays de gastronomie, de créativité, donc on a ça dans nos gènes. Donc je pense qu'on a la bonne base. Et après, je pense que tout le défi collectif, c'est de la faire fructifier. Et donc, de former nos talents et de les garder, d'attirer les talents étrangers parce qu'on a déjà une base, de mobiliser les financements et même de les encourager, et de créer un environnement, je dirais, le plus coopératif possible pour qu'il y ait des effets d'accélération. Et c'est à peu près ça qu'on fait au fond depuis un peu plus de 4 ans, collectivement. Alors moi, je veux vraiment remercier VivaTech, toute l'équipe, mais aussi tous les entrepreneurs et entrepreneuses qui sont là aujourd'hui. Parce que c'est votre travail qui paye. Et les réformes ne sont là que pour répondre à des demandes, à des aspirations, mais c'est qu'ensuite elles sont bien utilisées pour qu'on ait des résultats. Et donc aujourd'hui, on peut être optimiste parce qu'on a ces résultats. Je regardais les chiffres. En 2020, on a 5,4 milliards d'euros de levée. C'est-à-dire qu'on a doublé les levées par rapport à 2017. On a continué à créer de plus en plus de startups, mais on les fait aussi de plus en plus grandir. Et sur les levées en grosse, on a triplé par rapport à 2017. On a de plus en plus de licornes créées. Il y a 2 ans, je disais, on va en faire 25 d'ici 2025. Certains me disaient, oui, d'accord, c'est sympathique, ça rime, mais on n'y arrivera pas. On en est à 15, on en a fait 5 depuis le début de l'année. Donc on va faire largement avant 2025 les licornes. Le sujet n'est plus là. Et je recevais hier tous les acteurs de Scale Up Europe, et je les remercie pour le travail qui a été fait. Ils proposent qu'on ait en Europe, là c'est pas simplement en franco-français, mais il faut le décliner à notre niveau, au moins 10 acteurs de plus de 100 milliards d'euros à horizon 2030. C'est jouable. Donc il y a un effet d'accélération de l'écosystème, parce qu'on avait les talents, parce qu'on a libéré les financements, et parce qu'il y a une coopération qui s'est installée. La dynamique est très bonne. Maintenant, moi, mon objectif, c'est qu'on consolide en franco-français tout cela, c'est-à-dire qu'on aille de plus en plus vite, de plus en plus fort. 2, qu'on arrive en européen à le faire, parce que le marché pertinent est au moins le niveau européen. Et donc, on y reviendra sans doute dans la discussion, mais qu'on arrive au niveau européen sur les sujets de financement, sur les sujets de compétences, sur les sujets de deep tech, sur les sujets de coopération, à développer un écosystème beaucoup plus puissant et qu'on accélère encore. Parce que quand ça se porte bien, il ne faut surtout pas se reposer, il faut accélérer pour creuser la différence.
Alors justement, Monsieur le Président, on a autour de vous 4 très très belles entreprises qui représentent la diversité des secteurs et la diversité de l'Europe. Alors je vais commencer par quelqu'un que vous connaissez, qui est le fondateur et CEO de Believe. On va switcher en anglais si vous le permettez, puisque ce sera plus pratique pour tout le monde. Mr. President, so let me introduce to you Denis Ladegaillerie, who is the founder and CEO of Believe. Believe is a very successful company that offers distribution and marketing services to artists all over the world. Denis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Nicolas. Believe is, maybe a few words about what Believe is, why we've gone, as you know, we've IPO'd the company a couple of weeks ago, and what the ambition is. follow me, there's two words that I will use, which are opportunity and ambition. Believe's mission is to develop recording artists in the digital world. Just to give some perspective, by the end of this decade, 90% of music consumption is going to be digital. And that means that for artists, digital audiences, digital marketing, digital promotion, digital development. And that is creating a fantastic opportunity to disrupt the existing music industry, bring better services. Artists in the digital world, they want different things. They want a different model. They want a better share of the economics. They want a digital-first expertise to help them seek their audience. They want more transparency. They want more respect in their relationships. So the way we've built the model, Believe's model, is real, as a digital native company, is really to address that opportunity that is coming to us in the next 10 years. Our ambition is very simple. Our ambition is to become the global leader at developing recording artists around the world. And we do think there's an opportunity for us to do this. Why did we IPO? It's very simple. We wanted to fund our organic development until 2025, and we are in a sector where there's a lot of opportunities for us to acquire companies. Today, I was just thinking a few minutes ago, almost 16 years ago this day, Believe was 3 people in my living room, and we'd signed 5 artists. That was probably the time when I was starting kicking people out of my living room at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, because we had people all the time. Today it's 1,500 people in 50 countries around the world, growing 36% year over year, and supporting 850,000 artists around the world. So we raise money because there's a big opportunity ahead of us, and because our ambition is market leadership. Why did we IPO? We had all of our choices. We had strategic come to us, to our doors, knock on our doors, wanting to do deals. We had private equity come to us. IPO choice was very simple. The opportunity ahead of us is very significant. We want to be able to associate all of our key executive teams, you're talking about talent, Mr. President, all of our internal talent to the success of a company. And being, as a public company, being able to have stock ownership for all of our employees, to build long-term incentive plans that allows us to share value was a key element in that decision. Staying independent for us as a public company, much easier to do than as a private company. So these are really the reasons that drove us, the funding, the independence, the ability to associate our people into going into IPO. One of the questions we got a lot was, why didn't you go to the US? One of our largest investors is a US funds. The first funds that believed in us were French funds. Our thinking was very simple. It was a very strong conviction for us to go to Europe. One, our headquarters and our main capabilities are in Paris. Our technology platform, operational capabilities, software engineers are all in Paris. We can find great talent, skilled talent, and that was a choice. Second thing is, people don't realize, but the world is changing. In music, for the past 50 years, the largest music market in the world has been the US. By 2028, the largest music market in the world is going to be Asia. The second largest music market in the world is going to be Europe. Makes much more sense for us to be in a market, listed in a market, that will be a major market tomorrow around the world. And I would say last element in the reason why going to Paris was very important, we felt that the work that has been done the past 4 or 5 years with Next 40, with the French tech initiatives, had created the conditions for us to be able to do it successfully, which we were able to do. And so we've seen a lot of progress, and my question for you, Mr. President, is really, We have gone through the IPO. We need to bring more companies. Bringing more companies is going to help us acquire more talent, educate more investors, larger talent pool. What can you do? What can France do to help build a pipeline of stronger companies listing in Europe to create that ecosystem?
Thank you very much, and congratulations for the IPO.
Thank you.
I think you provided probably one of the most important answers to your own question, if I may. I think we have to take the right decisions, but to create the relevant ecosystem. So a few things. 4 years ago, we had a lot of startup creations, some business angels, and some companies starting to invest, and some existing funds at a very early stage. What we had to build is an ecosystem with larger tickets in order to avoid having these companies, these startups, leaving France and Europe to go to either London or New York, or California and wherever, to get access to bigger tickets. I think we are pretty much fixing this issue. But now the question is about the exit for, obviously, all the main investors, especially when they accept to put a large ticket or a larger ticket in these tech companies. The exit is through, obviously, M&A and IPO. So we have to build an actual ecosystem providing liquidity for these investors. And I think what we need is first a relevant financial market to provide this ecosystem. And second, a good cooperation with large caps in order to provide this exit through M&A. And this is exactly what we are doing. During the past year, we started to build an ecosystem of investors in order to have larger tickets and increase and have this growth financing. It's being fixed, according to me. We have to consolidate, and we have now to reach a higher and a stronger financing ecosystem at the European scale. And so, to be very concrete, number one action to me is to try to replicate what we did with the TB Fund and the TB Initiative at the French scale, at the European scale. With the TB Initiative, for those who are not totally familiar with in this room, is the fact that we found the way to redirect part of the savings in institutional investors' pockets to the financing in equity of the tech market. We redirected 6 billion euro. We've already used 3.5 amongst these 6 billion, which allowed us to invest 20 billion in the tech sector with the very first result. This is one of the main explanations of the 2020 figures and outcomes I mentioned. So we have to do exactly the same at the European scale. On top of that, we have to push again some regulation incentives in order to push the system to help the banks and the insurances to invest more in equity for the tech sector, because today we have counter incentives. Number two, it's obviously to encourage M&A and IPO at the European level. And to do so, we have to leverage on what we are doing and what our large caps are doing in France, and I do want to thank them, because it's not something you take by decree. This is the fact that now you have strong believers in this room as CEO on large caps, and now they want to cooperate with startups in order to change their own business models. And they did understand this point many years ago, so they provided a lot of exits for a lot of investors. And I want to thank them, because this is a very positive circle. We have to do exactly the same and build the same ecosystem at precisely the European scale. But the other point, in order to address your issue, is building an actual single European market for the different sectors and for your verticals, and in terms of financial ecosystem. And it's absolutely critical. It's even more critical for your sectors than the others. I take the rationale of your own listing. You say, my business is absolutely key in Europe, because it will be in a few years, the second market in the world, and it's well positioned to get access to the Asian one. But your rationale is based on the fact that the European market is a single market. So we have to accelerate in lifting barriers in the different verticals to make this European market real for all of you. This is key. And the same in terms of financing. So we have, during the past few years, lifted a lot of barriers to build precisely a financial ecosystem much more adapted to that, but we have now to replicate the next 40 and the FT 120, at least at the European scale, and we have to complete the work in order to have an actual European financial market. These few concrete points are totally feasible, and we will put them at the core of the agenda for the coming months, and especially to try to deliver first very concrete results under the French presidency first semester of 2022. But thank you very much, and once again, congratulations for your IPO. Because de facto, with your IPO, you give credibility to these choices, and you create a positive dynamic. And I want to insist on the point, the more we will have successful startups deciding to list themselves on the European market, the more you will create yourself a relevant ecosystem, because you will get access to a certain scale with more and more analysts and smarter analysts to understand your own business model and pushing the investor to finance more this ecosystem. So this is a virtuous circle. So we need your cooperation, because regulation is nothing if there is no trust in this ecosystem. So thank you, because the best proof of trust is exactly the choice you made a few weeks ago.
Thank you. So Believe is in the digital services sector. Now let's move to industry with Giorgio Anania, who is the CEO of Aledia, a company that is developing and manufacturing LED displays. Giorgio.
Thank you. So yes, I've been in deep tech startups most of my life. I've been associated with or have started 7 startups. One went to 5,000 people, so that's good. It doesn't always happen. So I've done them in the US, the UK, Germany, and France. And right now I'm president and CEO of Aledia. We hope to change the way displays work, or for all types of displays. Much more energy efficient, much brighter, much smaller, so that enable augmented reality. In 5 years, you will see the power of augmented reality. It's 5 years, it's not 3, but it's not 10 either. And these things are going to change the world. So let me get back to the real core. I think over the next 10 years, there is going to be a wave of innovation like we have never seen the last 30. I think everyone agrees on that now. There's never been a better moment to impact more things and create more jobs through technology. The combination of COVID has made us understand that, but also the US-China trade wars have meant that Europe has realized that it's missing some of that own industry to be able to develop its future. So that brings me to industrialization. So we plan to make these things, so we need capital. It's a worldwide market, we need lots of capital. And that is where the issues really have to change. So today there is infinite money available in the US. You've seen SPACs, for example. SPACs, which are reverse mergers, typically allow you to raise money in an IPO maybe 2 years earlier. 2 years is enormous. We're competing with people like Apple and Google and so forth. And having the money, like 400 or 500 million, 2 years earlier is enormous. Okay, but that's essentially in the US. China, there's infinite money. Whoever goes to China gets infinite money. Europe's been asleep for 20 years. It's now finally woken up. It's a different world now from a year ago. It's woken up. My worry is that between waking up and actually implementing the changes, we cannot wait 20 years like last time, because the things are happening too quickly. Now, I'm not French, so I can say it. I think this government in France really gets, creation of companies, really understands it. There's never a day going by that BPI France, for example, doesn't offer to help. I mean, it's a real war machine. And when we were trying to decide to put our plant either in France or in Singapore, as it turns out, in the end, it made a lot of difference that we felt incredibly supported. So for me, this is miles different from what it was years ago, completely different. I'm also president of a startup we're trying to do in Germany, and I sort of get the feeling it's a little bit more business as usual. And No, but there's a real sense of urgency. So, which brings me to my question, which is really three related questions. One is, how do we make access to capital in Europe as easy in Europe as it is in the US and China? What I mean is 10 times more, because it's increasing here, but it's increasing elsewhere. So, where are the big pockets of money? Secondly, how can we get Europe to change in, please, 3 years, not 20? And thirdly is, particularly for industrialization, when you're now, we're building our first facility, you go from a 50-man company to a 150-man company to maybe 500 or 1,000. How do we simplify regulation in France so that regulation, which is really meant to be okay for multinationals, it's very difficult for a small company to be able to grow at the right speed with all of that?
No, thank you very much. I perfectly agree with your statement. And I think everything is about speediness and scale. This is why I think we need more European strategy and more European efficiency. And I think we have now what I mentioned about finishing the work on the financing side and increasing and strengthening an actual digital single market, and it's true for the different verticals. And DMA and DSA are absolutely key for this issue. But second, we need indeed speediness and scale. And regarding your point, a few remarks. How to get access as in China and in the US. First, I think we can attract a lot of Chinese and American investors in this very place. Because when I look at what they are financing sometimes, and some bullshit innovations they can finance, because just you have too much liquidity on the market, de facto, the market is smart when you make the information transparent. And this place now is more and more perceived as first business friendly and very innovative. So the more we have and we elaborate and we increase the strength of this place regarding startups as innovation and investors, the more you will attract investors coming from the US and China to go in this place and put their money. So I think this is the big acceleration we need. I want more competition than that, more attractiveness, and it is one of the critical agenda. So we have to increase this point, which will push us to increase as well all these exit strategies. Second, I think we have to change a little bit our procurement approach. We put a lot of money as governments, especially on deep tech. We put a lot of money as Europeans through the Commission's program. And our classical bias is that we play with the usual suspects. And I think this is for me a mistake. And I say that by experience. Just looking, for instance, at what happened in the space industry. I mentioned that to some of your colleagues yesterday for the scale-up tour, but a few years ago, nobody thought it was possible to have SpaceX competing with some large corporates, very well financed and installed, especially in Europe. They totally disrupted our market by the combination of super innovation, disruption, total change in the organization because they were startups, and financing by federal agencies. And this combination is super powerful. And my guess is that the US organization will be based on climate change and energy, on mobility, on defense, on this exact approach. This is what they will do. Big money, large ticket, but huge, coming from federal agencies with new player in the game, with super innovative, disruptive program. If we play with the usual suspects, with average tickets and slow reaction, honestly speaking, we will be totally lost in the coming decades in energy, mobility, climate change, and in deep tech sector. So the second approach for me, after attracting the investors and all the pockets you mentioned in Asia and the US, is to change our procurement approach and to be much more in a cooperative way with the startup and the innovative ecosystem at the national and the European scale. And to build program with much shorter time to invest and with larger tickets and with the association of very innovative programs. This is for me absolutely critical to answer your issue, because indeed the deep tech has this feature that you have to burn sometime a lot of money in a short period of time to get access to the market, and there is a big bonus to the first player. And this is where we have to help you, because this is where, if we want to build European solutions, we have to react. And just one quick remark regarding this point. Deep tech will completely transform indeed our organizations and our societies. I totally share your view about a huge acceleration. And this is for us as well, and I want to share that with you. This is a matter of sovereignty for us. If we miss this window of opportunity, and if we leave the floor to the US and the Chinese, they will have the champions, and they will decide the technologies we will have for the following decades. If we want to be put in a situation as Europeans to have champions and to decide for ourselves and for our citizens, this is a huge incentive to build and finance European solutions. So this acceleration is for me as well a political matter, because this is a question of sovereignty.
Thank you. Mr. President, Ana Maiques on your right is from Spain. Her company is based in Barcelona. By the way, Barcelona is one of those European cities where the startup scene is thriving and is brilliant. She is at the forefront of innovation in neurosciences. But Anna, can you maybe explain much better than me what you're doing?
So it's great to be here. Thanks, Mr. President, for your support to the startups. As an entrepreneur and as an entrepreneurs, all the entrepreneurs in the room, we are driven not by money, right? By visions, right? So if I have to highlight two things that have driven my career as entrepreneur, it's the passion for science, specifically about the brain. The question is, how does the brain work? And then the commitment to do something good with the science, have an impact. Every morning when I wake up, I think about good science and good impact. That's what keeps me going every day, day after day. So, you know, we started the company 10 years ago in Barcelona, and let me show you what we have done. So the brain is the most sophisticated, yet the most complex part of our body. So now that you're listening to me, hopefully, your brain is creating electrical signals. There is an electrical storm in your brain. So I'm not going to make it put the cat. Would have been nice, but so this is my cup, right? It has a bunch of electrodes, and tomorrow I will show it on VivaTech full screen. But today I'm just going to show the president. This is my brain in real time, right? This is the electrical activity right now on my brain. So pretty active, pretty active. So it's not only that you can see my brain in real time, any of the electrodes I'm wearing can inject currents into the brain, which means I can modulate brain activity. I can inject little currents anywhere in the brain. And I think this can help millions of patients out there. Patients with epilepsy. The biggest pandemic is yet to come, is mental health. We need new solutions for mental health. We are aging, neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, we don't have a cure. So as innovators, as entrepreneurs, we need to bring good science and understanding of the brain, but go the extra mile and take it to impact patients. So what did I do? 5 years ago, I scaled up my company into the most competitive place on earth for life sciences, Boston. So I opened my company as an European, and I tell you, being a woman CEO in Boston wasn't easy. But I was committed. I have a sense of purpose, so I went for it. I have to tell you that in epilepsy, last week the FDA declared our technology, made in Europe, breakthrough designation. It's not easy to get a breakthrough designation by the FDA, but it shows how much patients need this. So we aim to become the first device to go through the FDA in a therapy that doesn't exist. And as an example, we managed to reduce seizures in children with epilepsy, 47% non-invasive, children that don't respond to medication. Same we are doing in depression at home. Right now, patients are being sent this device home at home, to treat their depression. So I think the future of healthcare is about innovation. It's combining hardware, software, artificial intelligence, personalization, telemedicine. So we need an army of innovators out there to help us with the healthcare challenges we have. I think that as a member of the European Innovation Council Advisory Board, and having lived in Boston and in Europe, I think that in Scale Up yesterday, we talk all the time about what we need: finance, collaboration, talent, but what about what we have already? Europe is fantastic. We can solve relevant problems in a responsible way, the European way. You mentioned yesterday about the European way. I think that's the opportunity for Europe. Science and ethics, deep tech in a responsible way. So my question to you is, first, how do you think the European way is going to attract, the next generation? I mean, what is your vision on what makes us unique to compete with China and the US? Because we already have it. And after the pandemic, how has your perception of healthcare changed?
No, thank you very much, and congratulations for your resilience as well, and this American success. And if I understand properly, the fact you decided to come back at home. I think indeed there is a European way, and this European model is definitely attractive. First, because we are the most sophisticated place in the world in terms of building scale by dealing with complexity precisely. And what we managed to deal with as Europeans means it is resilient to globalization day after, because you dealt with a certain degree of complexity from the very beginning, and cooperation. But more than that, I think this is a marriage of science, indeed, ethics, and economic ambition. And I think this combination is unique in Europe. In the US, you have definitely scale. You have sometimes much more efficient market allocation. This is true. But definitely, you don't have the same relationship with ethics and with the democratic way to decide and regulate the tech sector. And I think what we need is to build champion, and precisely to deliver what we discussed at the beginning of the conversation, i.e. more investment, more attractiveness for talents and funds and so on. And having the champions, it's critical. But at the same time, what we've done from the very beginning, and for years and years, and what is our DNA, is precisely having this ethical way to proceed. And we are building the relevant regulation for these different markets. And I want to insist on that. I don't believe one sec there is a sustainable business without any regulation. It seems to be attractive at the very beginning, but it doesn't fly. It's not sustainable. And we speak a lot about sustainability when it is about climate change, but we forget to speak about sustainability when it is about humanity and our own values, human rights and so on. But is a system of innovation sustainable when democratic values are no more regulated, except by the decision of a private platform to shut you down or not? I don't think so. I think this is a huge debate, and it is not sustainable. I don't want to live in a democracy where the worst is possible when a private platform decide to allow it, and when I can be completely kick off the system the day this own private platform decide to kill me. This is not our value. Today, this is a situation in the US ecosystem. I don't believe one sec this is sustainable. Am I ready to live in a place where this kind of data I have on your brain is the entire property of a company, and that all the data you have on my brain could be sold without any consent and without any control to my insurance life company to select the good risk and the bad risks, and to completely change de facto the way we live together. Because given this data, perhaps my insurance life company will decide to stop insuring me. This is not our European way to live. So all these things means you need democratic governments to make some critical points of our innovative ecosystem transparent for the citizens. And we need political and democratic debates on this issue to decide which kind of regulation we want. And indeed, some of these regulations will stop some bad innovation or bad use of innovation for the best. Because in any case, I believe that innovations can kill or threaten our democracies. And this is clearly the European way to innovate. And I think this model means we put all together our collective preference as being not negotiable, but being part of good and what I call sustainable innovation. We started with the innovation precisely for our citizens and the European regulation for data. We will complete it with DMA and DSA for precisely our European markets, but it will be the same for healthcare and so on. And I think, believe me, when you make billions of investment, having a place where day one you think about how to make it sustainable for our values, our civilization, is a much more resilient business model than going to a place where people say, this is not an issue, you will have no constraint. This place is not a sustainable one. They will have either a big democratic crisis or a big business crisis, the point they will have to import and inject this regulation. It's much better to be clear and lucid and to sync the business model day one with this democratic regulation. As for the healthcare system, I think this is, for me, have two big pillars of investment and of transformation in the country: education and healthcare. A lot of things we are speaking about, you know that much better than myself. And I'm convinced that I have to streamline the organization of the government. I have streamlined all our regulations. The point you made was perfectly true. We are too slow, too complicated. So my job is to simplify and to streamline. I have two big issues where the government investment is justified: education, healthcare. Even climate change, I have to invest now to help and accelerate innovation, but we can see that more and more private sector is providing solutions. Being more and more, we were speaking about that with Bertrand right just before, but the private sector is making this innovation more and more profitable. We have to bridge the gap with public money. But two critical sectors are to be transformed with the influence of the public sectors, at least given the European organization, healthcare and education. And what I see is that we put already a lot of money, but we have to make it much more efficient by increasing our investments to improve personalization and to be much more preventive in our approach. I mean, we have a very efficient system where we treat what we know. What we have to improve is precisely how to personalize the healthcare solution, how to adapt it to each citizen, which is feasible through innovation, how to reduce the cost of treatment through precisely this personalization of the model, but how to prevent the emergence of chronic diseases and some diseases by a better investment on some good behaviors and by accompanying the good choices for each citizen. And artificial intelligence, personalized approach, innovation in deep tech, healthcare, deep precisely disruptive innovation, and providing holistic system to accompany citizens to better precisely decide for themselves their choices are the two critical pillars of this approach. This is a huge revolution because our system is based on an approach which is not centralized on the citizen, but the structures, hospitals, and so on. And we have to make this shift. Thanks to innovation, we can do it. And we can have a much better use of public money and our citizens' money. So this is why my conviction, especially at the very end, I hope, of this crisis, is that innovation will help us to precisely make this big shift in our collective organization precisely for our citizens, but as well a better cooperation for all the players of the healthcare model. I do believe that. I think we have in France, and I want to finish on this point, I think we have a great advantage. We are a super centralized model. Very often, it's perceived as a weakness. For healthcare, this is a big advantage because it means that data is super centralized and protected by the government. And believe me, to do what you want to do is a big advantage if we know how precisely to manage and to open access in in perfect trust with our citizens, but how to open access to this data for secure, innovative way to approach the healthcare system. Because in a lot of countries where data is dealt at a very decentralized level, it's a nightmare to provide creative and innovative solutions. When data is driven by the private sector, it's a nightmare to deal with ethical issues. Data here is centralized, guaranteed, and precisely guaranteed by public entities. Now the question is how we cooperate to accelerate innovation in healthcare system thanks to that. This paradox is to be underlined because this is where the French ecosystem could be attractive.
Okay, thank you. So after Spain, France, Italy, let's move to Sweden. Sweden is home of very successful companies like Skype, like Spotify, and Klarna. 90 million clients. You have a valuation, you told me, of around $45 billion or euros, I don't know.
Dollars.
Dollars, well, that's huge. Sebastian, tell us, you're in financial services, I should...
Yeah, and first and foremost must say, Mr. President, that I'm extremely happy that you're around, that there is a president and a person in the European Union that is as business-friendly as you and driving these agendas, and it's desperately needed. I was just as you and in England last week, and I spent time with the government there. And as much as some people are against Brexit or for Brexit, they're now taking the most advantage of that to reform a lot of legislation. We started Klarna 16 years ago with the ambition to really disrupt retail banking. Banking industry has forgot about the customers a long time ago. We're now 90 million users, we have 4,000 employees, we have 20 million users in the US, and we're getting there. But I've done this for 16 years, I plan to continue for a couple more decades. Unfortunately, a little bit of that time I spent in Brussels. And a part of that time I spent on open banking, where I really believe, just like what you said, that if we can regulate for real customer data mobility, if we can put regulation in place that allows consumers to take their data with them from some of the tech giants in the US to other European services in a very simple way, if we allow consumers to move their data from existing banks to new banks, this will drive competition, will drive benefit for consumers. The unfortunate fact, though, spending time in Brussels, is that the legislation coming out of Brussels falls short of that. That was the ambition of GDPR. That was the ambition of open banking. What GDPR has given us is 142 lifetimes are spent every day in the European Union accepting cookies. That is not proceeding, it's not helping on privacy, and it's only making us more complacent about privacy than anything else. So what can we do to finally, with your help, get some proper good regulation coming out of Brussels? Because I've seen it. It's veto rights, it's slow, it doesn't give us the benefits. We need regulation that actually can advance Europe and can put us at the forefront of regulation that benefits the consumers and where innovation will happen when technology gets access to better regulation for consumers.
No, I take your point. I will defend GDPR anyway, because I think it's right that you have a lot of disclaimers and it puts a lot of constraints, but anyway, it's secure. Anyway, the fact that you cannot do, you take a big legal risk if you are not compliant with this regulation. So this is the way the industry dealt with this regulation, but I think at the end of the day, it's much better than having no regulation for my own personal data. And I think this issue will become more and more important, because all these business models are based, and a lot of these business models are based on precisely the side businesses made with data and what you can do through artificial intelligence or cross markets with the use of this data. And I think it's good to have at least a minimum consent in order to do so, and to be sure that the day we want to increase regulation, we are sure that there are some existing legal constraints and that the customer is properly informed. So I want just to defend that. Anyway, I think that indeed, when the regulation blocks innovation, it's a bad regulation. When regulation protects the interest of the citizen, this is a good regulation. And the good regulation is the one which is compatible with these two objectives. So sometimes we have to adjust, and I perfectly understand your point. I think your model is one of the critical ones to indeed disrupt the banking sector. This is true that we still have some conservative approaches in this sector. This is true that we have some bias. Let's be collectively honest, and even as a government, I will be honest, because your model is good for the customer because you provide solution and sometimes better solution. But as a government, and for the 27, sometimes it's not totally good because you can destroy retail jobs and you don't provide the same level of jobs. So this is, the interests are not totally automatically aligned. And this is where the regulation can be pictured as slow for you because it is good for the retail players and it is sometimes good for the governments we are to try to see, okay, we have so many disruptions that if I can protect the existing jobs when they make sense not to accelerate this disruption. I'm fair and transparent with you because I think that part of the time you spent in Brussels is as well due to this reluctance to help you too fast to destroy some of these jobs we have in the retail bank. So I think one of the critical points is how to help you to improve the innovation which provides new services which is not in competition with the existing retail structures. And as a government, I'm totally fair and transparent with you. I don't want to lie here. I have a clear incentive to help you to provide to my citizen, my companies, additional solutions to be more efficient, to get access to new market and new services. I have less incentive to help you to completely disrupt the existing market and destroy a lot of jobs if you don't provide me the same level of creation for my people. Because I have to deal with a lot of disruption, and I always have to look at where I create value for my country, where I create value based on innovation and pure added innovation, and when I create value precisely in terms of jobs. So the more you can convince me,
I would try to. But I think it's interesting also
I create
Singapore.
new jobs and I will not destroy existing jobs. I create new services. They are not just in competition to replace them because I'm 100% digital, but I add something. The more we can build positive regulation. But having said that, I still advocate and defend GDPR because I think this is a good pillar to elaborate additional regulation.
I think it's
and
great.
We have to protect privacy.
I want that. I want people to have customer mobility, move data around. But I think if you look at Singapore, they have pushed the envelope for open banking, and that has made a lot of Asian banks want to invest in a market that only has 8 million people, and that becomes then the leading technology of banking, and then those banks then bring those services to other markets. And I think European Union now has the ability, if we regulate this market and creates an environment where innovation can happen here before it helps elsewhere, it will create more jobs here. And the incumbents' ways of doing it is not going to be around anyway, because anything that's better for the consumer will, will survive over the longer time. So I think I think there's all the opportunity now. We just need to lean forward into technology, not backward from it, right?
I agree with you. Now, my point, I think a lot of these players are moving themselves and are on a strong path of digitization for themselves. I think your description is, when this description provides new services and makes it more efficient, I'm totally in support. I wanted to be clear about the distinction I made.
But it makes
and
sense.
I think, by the way, and you know that much better than myself, but when you look at the innovation in your business as well, Bitcoins and all these innovations are the one precisely which are disrupting as well the whole market and the one we have to embrace. But I think that when the regulation is just here to block innovation and protect the existing players, this is a bad regulation. Because at the point of time, you are disrupted by new players coming from elsewhere. So I will always favor players coming from the European landscape. But the point to be taken, to be fair with you, is that I always make the distinction when innovation provides totally new service, totally new device, totally new solutions, and when the disruption is just through digitization, how to make it more efficient, because I'm less with dealing with existing people. This is a distinction I make.
Let me switch back to French, if I may. En conclusion, Monsieur le Président, on sait tous qu'en Europe, on n'a pas évidemment d'entreprise de la taille des GAFA capable de structurer tout un marché au niveau mondial. Le collectif Scale Up Europe a fait un certain nombre de propositions pour arriver à ce qu'on ait une dizaine d'entreprises qui vaudraient une centaine de milliards d'euros d'ici 2030. Alors, Klarna est en bonne voie pour y arriver. Pour les autres, ce sera peut-être un peu plus long. Ça vous semble réaliste?
Totalement. D'abord, merci beaucoup et bravo. Enfin, vraiment, j'ai essayé de répondre de manière la plus honnête et directe à chacun d'entre vous, mais bravo pour ce que vous représentez et ce que vous faites. Enfin, c'est très impressionnant et je dirais c'est la meilleure preuve. Ça vaut tous les discours et tous les choix et le fait que vous le fassiez en tant qu'Européen, avec vos choix, votre volonté. Et moi, je prends le point, indépendamment de nos discussions spécifiques, sur le fait que, pour moi, un des sujets principaux, c'est aussi qu'on aille plus vite et qu'on simplifie les choses. Et ça, c'est clair. Je pense que vous avez raison sur ce sujet. Deux choses quand on se compare par rapport à votre question. Je pense que la donne internationale est en train de changer si on joue bien la coopération. C'est-à-dire que je pense que le temps de business non régulé avec d'énormes biais de concurrence est en train de se terminer. Et je vois deux phénomènes à ça. L'accélération de ce que j'appellerais l'agenda de Christchurch. On a lancé en mai 2019 avec la Nouvelle-Zélande et on a associé de plus en plus d'États cet agenda qui est de réguler les plateformes mais qui crée malgré tout une jurisprudence qui va ensuite se diffuser. Les États-Unis nous ont rejoints il y a 2 mois, on en a beaucoup parlé. On va rentrer quand même dans une logique où justement cette approche éthique qui réimporte nos valeurs et la régulation sur des plateformes qui s'étaient mondialisées, je pense, va se généraliser. Premier point. Deuxième point, la taxe internationale pour laquelle on se bat depuis 4 ans, pour laquelle je dirais nous, Français, on a payé, parce que non seulement on s'est battu à l'OCDE, on s'est battu en européen, mais on a eu le courage de le faire et on a eu les rétorsions. Je pense qu'il ne faut jamais l'oublier pour ceux qui ont vécu les rétorsions dans nos écosystèmes. On a des viticulteurs qui ont apparemment rien à voir avec notre rencontre d'aujourd'hui. C'est parce que des viticulteurs se sont pris les conséquences collatérales et parce qu'on a tenu qu'on peut être là aujourd'hui et dire qu'on va peut-être réussir à faire cette avancée qui était un énorme biais. Parce qu'il y avait un paradis fiscal qui s'était créé de fait avec les décisions d'il y a une dizaine d'années et qui fait qu'on avait des acteurs qui avaient, je dirais, des capacités d'investissement bien supérieures à vous tous. Simplement, il n'y avait pas cette taxe qui existait. Il y avait même un système très sophistiqué, on le sait, où ils pouvaient mettre dans des paradis fiscaux reconnus par le droit américain leur surprofit et ensuite revenir avec ce cash pour faire du M&A prédateur et du M&A qui détruisait de l'innovation en Europe. C'est ce qui s'est passé ces dernières années, si on est honnête avec nous-mêmes. J'espère que ça, on va pouvoir l'arrêter. Puis troisième point, dans le débat public américain, naît quand même l'idée que ce n'est pas too big to fail, mais c'est too big to be sustainable sur certains sujets. Et je pense que cette logique, elle est importante. C'est toute celle qui a vécu d'ailleurs aux États-Unis au moment du premier Roosevelt et au début du XXe siècle, celle de se dire on a des conglomérats qui à un moment donné sont mauvais pour le pays parce que, comme vous l'avez d'ailleurs très bien dit pour le secteur, ils tuent l'innovation parce qu'ils ont trop d'intérêt et ils empêchent les nouveaux innovateurs de venir.
La solution, c'est le démantèlement?
C'est dans le débat américain, vous l'avez vu lors de la campagne, et donc c'est évident qu'à un moment donné, cette question continuera de se poser. Je pense qu'elle est légitime. Et je pense que quand on a des groupes qui ont eu les comportements de prédation qu'ils ont eu sur les marchés européens ou émergents ces dernières années, c'est-à-dire qui s'attaquent à des verticaux qui ne sont pas bien régulés malgré tout le travail qui a été fait par la Commission européenne et que je salue, c'est de toute façon une question parce qu'en termes de bien-être collectif, à un moment donné, ils finissent par être négatifs. Parce que tout simplement, le système se retourne sur lui-même. C'est-à-dire ce sont des acteurs qui ont été super talentueux, qui ont réussi à avoir des situations de rente d'innovation, laquelle est la seule légitime dans une économie de marché, et à un moment donné, ils l'utilisent pour créer de la rente de régulation et empêcher tout le monde de rentrer. Ce n'est pas un système qui est vertueux. Donc, on aura à un moment cette question qui nous sera posée, je pense, plutôt tôt que tard. Bon. Donc je dis, ces 3 débats, ces 3 avancées, de toute façon, vont dans les 10 prochaines années structurer différemment le débat américain. Je le crois très profondément. Mais à côté de ça, il ne faut pas qu'on soit naïf. Les Américains vont continuer à innover. Ils sont en train de mettre beaucoup plus d'argent sur les secteurs clés et ils sont en train de mettre des tickets plus importants que nous et ils ont une capacité à jouer avec les startups à ce stade, je dois le dire, qui est meilleure que nous. Et donc, dans la deep tech, dans le climat, je le disais, dans une partie des services, dans ce qu'ils peuvent être capables de faire sur le Bitcoin, dans ce qu'ils seront capables de faire sur la mobilité, sur le cyber, sur l'intelligence artificielle, je pense qu'il ne faut pas du tout rester assis sur nos lauriers, dans le spatial, dans le nucléaire. Tous ces secteurs-là sont à disrupter. Et ils seront disruptés, c'est ma conviction, par le couple agence fédérale avec beaucoup d'argent et start-up. Donc tout ça doit nous conduire à accélérer, accélérer, accélérer et à penser en européen, en européen, en européen. C'est les 2 piliers. Et donc je pense, hier on en a longuement parlé avec celles et ceux qui ont accepté de mettre de leur temps, de leur énergie et de leur talent sur Scale-up. Bon, moi je pense qu'il faut qu'on continue, il ne faut surtout pas qu'on s'arrête et qu'on se dise c'est super, on a réussi, cocorico. J'ai un biais, je le reconnais comme vous. J'ai plutôt intérêt à ce qu'on le dise aujourd'hui. Si vous pouvez le dire, ça m'arrange beaucoup. Parce que je pense qu'on a tellement tendance à se flageller et à dire on n'est pas bon, on va mourir, c'est une catastrophe, on est trop lent. C'est faux. Je veux dire, là, on peut quand même on peut dire, l'Europe a vachement accéléré ces dernières années. Et oui, la France est leader. Donc oui, on peut le dire, on peut être super fier. Et là, lever les bras et dire c'est une super nouvelle. Donc premier point, être fier. Parce que la fierté redonne de l'ambition et l'ambition permet d'avoir des résultats. Donc moi, je ne céderai rien au défaitisme ambiant. Deuxième sujet, je le redis pour répondre à votre question, mais il est clé, c'est bon pour tout le monde. Et je veux vraiment le redire parce qu'on a tous vécu ensemble ces crises et le débat collectif qu'on vit. N'opposons pas le secteur de la tech et des startups au reste du pays. C'est une catastrophe si on fait ça. Et ceux qui font ça portent une responsabilité qui est très lourde. Il n'y aurait pas d'un côté la France des Gilets jaunes et de l'autre côté la France de la tech. Ce n'est pas vrai. C'est un faux débat. D'abord parce que la crise des Gilets jaunes venait de très loin et les gens qui ont manifesté avec beaucoup de bonne foi, je distingue des gens très violents et qui sont aux extrêmes et qui parfois continuent en prenant ce dossard mais qui n'est pas le combat initial. Ils se battaient pour le pouvoir d'achat et pour un projet inclusif dans le pays, mais ce sont des gens qui sont sensibles au changement climatique et qui veulent que le pays réussisse. La clé, c'est comment on réussit à redonner du sens et à montrer que créer de la valeur en France, c'est bon pour tout le monde. Et je vais être simple. Le secteur de la tech, il nous a permis de créer entre 150 000 et 200 000 emplois directs. C'est bon pour tout le monde. Il en crée dans tous les territoires. Quand Insect ou Innovafit viennent dans ma région natale, que je connais bien, et créent des emplois, c'est bon. Et c'est bon dans une France qui souffre. Quand, justement, ça permet, avec des acteurs comme Doctolib, de faire de l'organisation très concrète de notre vaccination, c'est bon pour tout le monde et pour les territoires les plus défavorisés. Et on peut même être fiers, c'est ces acteurs-là qui nous a fait vacciner en Allemagne. Donc je veux dire par là que le succès de la tech, ce qu'on a consolidé, ce qu'on est en train de faire, c'est bon pour le pays et pour tout le pays. Et la réponse au sujet des inégalités ne passe pas par une politique qui devrait freiner ou ralentir l'innovation ou la tech. C'est faux. Très mauvais débat. Débat qui nous fera reculer de 10 cases. La clé, c'est comment on arrive à aller encore plus vite, faire que ces investissements irriguent tout le pays comme ils ont commencé à le faire, et faire qu'on ait des champions en France et en Europe qui permettront de créer de plus de jobs possibles, plus d'emplois possibles, pour permettre justement en sortie de crise de sortir du chômage de masse. C'est ça notre défi. Et le deuxième élément clé, c'est comment faire en sorte que, en sortie de crise, la tech permette de répondre aux sujets de progrès social pour tout le monde, c'est-à-dire solutions de climat, solutions d'éducation, solutions de santé, et de le faire en bâtissant des champions européens qui nous permettront d'être souverains avec notre propre régulation. C'est ça la mère des batailles. Et donc pour faire ça, moi je reprends les conclusions de Scale Up Tour, je leur ai dit. Parce que je pense que la bonne méthode, c'est une méthode coopérative. Vous savez mieux que moi comment réussir. Et moi je sais vous dire à quelles conditions on peut réussir, celle à laquelle on peut expliquer à nos concitoyens que votre modèle est bon ou pas bon. C'est la discussion qu'on a eue. Et donc oui, donnons-nous comme objectif 2030, au moins 100 boîtes qui ont les 100 milliards comme objectif. C'est jouable. Je pense même qu'on ira plus vite et plus fort. C'est totalement jouable. Pour ça, il faut pousser l'initiative TB au niveau européen. Il faut finir le travail d'une vraie Europe, d'un vrai marché européen de la finance, pas simplement bancaire, mais aussi des marchés financiers pour avoir des vrais exits et une place financière européenne structurée. On est en train de le faire. Et il faut l'accélérer tous les sujets de régulation et le faire de manière ouverte, permettant l'innovation et les sorties. 3, il faut avoir un écosystème Next 40, FT 120, le monter au niveau européen de la même manière et avoir les stratégies de coopération avec les large caps. 4, il faut le VisaTech européen comme on l'a fait en France pour attirer les talents du monde entier sur les places européennes, que ce soit Barcelone, Munich, Paris, Toulouse, Montpellier ou autres, et permettre la mobilité de ces talents dans l'espace européen. Et 5, il faut une politique de deep tech massive qui passe par des investissements beaucoup plus forts au niveau de la Commission, avec des tickets plus larges, simplifiés et beaucoup plus rapides. Et donc ce que j'appelais tout à l'heure la politique de procurement adaptée au niveau européen, sur les quelques verticaux qu'on a décidés. Le cyber, l'intelligence artificielle, le climat, le deep tech, le quantique, etc. On a commencé en franco-français et en franco-allemand et plus largement en européen à lancer cela. La question maintenant, c'est de le faire très vite, à la bonne échelle, c'est-à-dire comparable avec les Américains, et avec une simplicité d'attribution des marchés qui permettent aux startups d'y entrer et d'avoir de la visibilité sur quelques années. Si on fait ce petit panel, il n'est pas exhaustif, enfin là j'ai touché quelques sujets clés, on peut non pas simplement maintenir le niveau qui est le nôtre aujourd'hui, mais continuer sur la courbe qui est en fait exponentielle. Cette exponentielle, c'est celle qu'on doit absolument réussir. Je pense qu'à côté de ça, on sous-estime encore les avantages compétitifs que les Européens ont par rapport aux autres. Et donc si on ajoute avec tout ça la capacité des gouvernements à faire que ce modèle soit inclusif, ça c'est mon boulot, avec vous, le fait que je pense que ce modèle il sera inclusif parce que ce sont vos valeurs, et vous l'avez d'ailleurs tous dit en parlant, et quand je vois d'ailleurs les valeurs de l'écosystème, vous voulez du sens pour le climat, vous voulez réduire les inégalités, vous voulez associer l'ensemble des collaborateurs de l'entreprise, je me dis qu'on a de bonnes chances de réussir. Simplement, il ne faut rien lâcher, il ne faut pas se reposer une seule seconde, et il faut, en sachant nos forces, en étant lucide sur les défis, réussir maintenant à accélérer et à penser encore plus grand. Mais on va y arriver, j'en suis sûr, j'ai aucun doute.
Merci infiniment, Monsieur le Président. Merci. Merci à tous.
On va filer dans le salon. Non, vraiment, je voulais vous remercier et vous dire, je sais que ces derniers mois ont été très durs. Ils ont été très durs pour tout le pays. Ils ont été durs pour beaucoup de nos jeunes. Ils ont été durs pour beaucoup d'entrepreneurs qui, je le sais, parfois ont été stoppés. Pour certains, ont tout perdu parce qu'être entrepreneur, c'est prendre tous ces risques. Et malgré les systèmes de garantie, les salariés on a essayé de couvrir au maximum les salariés. Ils ont parfois perdu, évidemment, tout ce qui était accessoire, c'est-à-dire en plus du salaire fixe. Mais les entrepreneurs, les indépendants ont beaucoup souffert. Je voulais vraiment vous dire, dans cette sortie de crise, on va tous être vigilants. Et je vous le dis, moi je crois à cet optimisme raisonnable. Mais on a une chance incroyable. C'est que dans les 6-12 mois qui viennent, nos choix collectifs, j'en suis intimement convaincu, vont déterminer la décennie à venir. Ils vont la déterminer. Et dans notre capacité à travailler ensemble, à avoir des choix ambitieux, à mettre les investissements au bon endroit, mais à avoir des stratégies de coopération partout. C'est-à-dire coopérer entre les grands et les petits. Coopérer pour que la valeur créée partout permette à tous de réussir et en quelque sorte d'agrandir la taille du gâteau, mais de le partager à chaque instant. on aura notre chemin de sortie de la crise. Je pense que la sortie de crise est une opportunité extraordinaire pour la France et l'Europe de bâtir durablement son modèle de croissance. Et je pense qu'il faut, dans la tête, changer beaucoup des logiciels. Il y a une partie des choses qui resteront inchangées. La compétitivité du monde, le besoin d'avoir un modèle attractif, d'attirer les talents, les capitaux. Ça ne changera pas. Il y a des choses qu'on a apprises durant la crise qu'il ne faut pas désapprendre. On a trouvé des gains de compétitivité et de bien-être durant la crise. Il ne faut pas revenir en arrière. On a appris des manières de travailler différemment, de coopérer dans l'entreprise, de coopérer hors de l'entreprise. On a fait de l'innovation sociale et des formes de solidarité inédites. Gardons-les en sortie de crise, consolidons-les, parce que ces innovations valent beaucoup à l'échelle d'un pays et rendent la vie meilleure. Et en sortie de crise, je pense qu'il faut aussi qu'on arrive à penser différemment le monde.